Right, let's head back to Middle-earth for another deep dive. This time we're looking at Chapter 9 of the Fellowship of the Ring.
At the sign of the Prancing Pony.
Yes. Prancing Pony, such a great chapter. We got some fantastic listener questions about it. So,
A good one.
yeah, it is. The Hobbits have left the Shire at this point, but things are about to get much more complicated.
Oh, yeah. Definitely a turning point in the story.
Absolutely. And it really hits on, I think, two major levels. We get the introduction of Bree and the Prancing Pony in itself.
That's a great setting.
So cool, right. And then, of course, we meet Strider for the first time. So what stands out to you about this chapter?
Well, I think it's fascinating how Tolkien takes a seemingly simple setting like an inn and uses it to introduce really complex ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, the Prancing Pony isn't just a place for the hobbits to grab a pint and rest. It's a microcosm of Middle-earth itself, And Bree, this little village, becomes this incredible crossroads where you have all these different races and cultures colliding. It's the first time the hobbits truly encounter the diversity of the world beyond the Shire.
Yeah, you're so right. It's like they've stepped out of their little Shire bubble and onto this huge world stage, and it's a lot more diverse than they expected.
Exactly.
I love how the sources describe the atmosphere of the inn,
Yeah.
The flickering lanterns, creaky floorboards, and all those different languages swirling around. It's so vivid. It kind of makes me wonder if Tolkien was maybe making a point about the dangers of isolationism.
Interesting.
Like we see in the Shire, and how understanding other cultures is so important when facing a threat like Sauron.
When you think about it, Tolkien lived through both world wars, and he saw firsthand the devastating consequences of division and prejudice. So Bree could be his way of showing that true strength comes from unity, from embracing diversity rather than fearing it.
Wow, I never thought about it that way, but it makes so much sense. Especially when you consider that whole looming threat of the Black Riders, it's like that warmth and camaraderie inside the inn are directly contrasted with this encroaching darkness that represents everything Sauron stands for.
Exactly. And speaking of shadows and darkness, we can't forget about Strider. His entrance in this chapter, oh man, one of the most iconic scenes. This mysterious figure lurking in the corner. He just radiates this aura of danger, but also this, magnetism. You know what I mean?
I always get chills reading that part. You're immediately drawn to him, but there's that tension too, like you can't quite trust him. Do you think Tolkien did that on purpose, playing with that archetype of the mysterious wanderer, or was he going for something deeper?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
Tolkien is so good at using foreshadowing and ambiguity. He keeps us guessing about Strider's true intentions, and that really mirrors the complexity the hobbits are facing at this point. They're realizing the world isn't so black and white anymore. Trust has to be earned, especially when the fate of Middle-earth is at stake.
Yeah, and then there's that moment, that moment when Frodo puts on the ring and vanishes in the middle of the common room? It's funny, but also kind of terrifying. What was your first reaction reading that scene?
Oh, man. It's a scene that stays with you. On the surface, it just seems like a little mishap, but it reveals so much about the ring's true nature.
Yeah.
At this point, Frodo doesn't fully understand the power he's carrying. Right?
Yeah.
So this incident shows us that the ring can exploit even the most innocent actions, twisting them to its own will.
And it gets some unwanted attention. The Black Riders are closing in, and that little slip-up could have some serious consequences. Speaking of the Black Riders, the sources don't really delve into their backstory. Like, we know they're scary, but who are they?
The Black Riders, they're not just scary horsemen, they're way more than that. They were once kings of men, but they were seduced by the power of the Nine Rings and corrupted by them. Now they're completely enslaved to Sauron's will. They're basically ring wraiths. They're the embodiment of the fear and despair Sauron wants to spread across Middle-earth.
That's a whole other level of creepy. So the hobbits aren't just facing physical danger. They're up against this, spiritual corruption that the Black Riders represent. It really raises the stakes.
Absolutely.
And you can feel that darkness pressing in on the Prancing Pony as the chapter ends, It's such a contrast to the warmth and laughter inside.
Yeah, that juxtaposition is so powerful, so effective.
It's like Tolkien is reminding us that even when things are at their darkest, there's still hope, still a reason to fight for good. But the danger is real. Very real.
And closing in fast, it's almost like, being in the Prancing Pony makes you forget about the danger outside for a bit.
Yeah.
You've got the warm fire, the good company.
Right.
But you can't escape that feeling that something's changing. The tone is shifting. It's not the Shire anymore.
Yeah, you're right. That shadow of Mordor is starting to creep in. Even the characters feel it, like
Yeah.
Butterbur, the innkeeper. The sources mention him, and it's interesting. He kind of represents the everyday people who get caught up in these epic events.
Oh, totally.
He's just trying to run his inn.
Keep his guests happy.
Yeah, totally oblivious to the, to the forces swirling around him.
I think Butterbur is a great character because he reminds us that even in this world with, ring wraiths and dark lords, most people are just living their lives.
Okay.
Adds a layer of realism, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And then we have Strider, who is definitely not your average traveler. We talked about that mysterious aura around him, but the sources also point out his connection to the past, like he's carrying this deep knowledge, maybe even a sadness.
Right. It's like he embodies both the allure and the danger of the wider world. He's skilled, resourceful, clearly understands Middle-earth history and lore.
Yeah.
But there's this darkness to him too.
Right.
Like some past trauma that's hinted at but never fully revealed.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, what's his story? And what do you think the Hobbits are making of all of this? I mean, they're straight out of the Shire. They're used to trusting pretty much everyone.
It's a big adjustment for them. I think they're drawn to Strider's knowledge, his strength, but at the same time, they're cautious.
Yeah.
They sense he's holding back, and Tolkien really plays with that uncertainty, that tension.
So he's using Strider to kind of explore that bigger idea of trust.
Exactly.
Clever. And it goes beyond just trusting a person, right? It's about learning to discern truth from deception when the stakes are so high.
And that's something we can all relate to, even if we're not, fighting ring wraiths.
Right.
We're always making judgments about who to trust, who to believe, and those choices have consequences.
And, speaking of mistakes and consequences, let's talk about Frodo and that whole ring incident in the common room. It's funny, but the sources suggest there's a lot more to it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think it's a turning point for Frodo. Up until now, he's been kind of naive about the ring.
Right.
It's a burden, a responsibility, but he doesn't really grasp the power or the danger.
Yeah, he's just a hobbit, not some, legendary hero.
Right. He's thrust into this crazy situation, and he's just trying to figure it out as he goes.
And that makes him relatable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that scene in the Prancing Pony, it's not just about Frodo's naivete. It's about the ring revealing his true nature.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It shows us the ring's power to corrupt, to isolate, to control.
Frodo is just trying to be friendly, entertain the crowd.
Right. And then, bam, he vanishes.
And he's completely alone, cut off from his friends.
And you know what else? He's basically sent up a signal flare to his enemies.
Oh, man.
They know where he is now. It's a reminder that the ring is always watching, always scheming.
Yeah, talk about a party foul. That moment really shows us the danger Frodo is in constantly, and how even a small action can have big consequences.
And it also emphasizes how important Frodo's companions are. They're not just there for support, they're his lifeline. Without them, he'd be lost.
That's a good point. I never thought of it that way.
They help him resist the Ray's influence.
This chapter really highlights the power of fellowship. Having people you can trust.
People you can rely on.
Especially when things get tough. It makes me think about, how we all need those people in our life.
Yeah.
Our own little fellowship. People who've got your back no matter what.
People you can count on, yeah.
Especially when things get rough,
Yeah. Tolkien was writing this during, right after a time of incredible darkness and uncertainty. I mean, World War II. And I think this story reminds us that even in those times, hope can still exist. Even little acts of courage, compassion, they can still make a difference.
And that courage can come from finding strength in each other. It's not just Frodo being tested in this chapter. It's the whole group, right?
Right.
Sam, Merry, Pippin, even Strider, they're all confronting their fears, making choices that'll decide their fates.
And a lot of those choices come down to trust, don't they?
Yeah.
Can they trust Strider? This guy, he knows so much but says so little. And can they trust each other as things get more dangerous? Tolkien doesn't make it easy on us, does he?
No, he doesn't, which is what makes it so good.
Right.
He makes us really think about these questions along with the characters.
Definitely.
I think he's trying to tell us that trust isn't just given, it's got to be earned. And sometimes it takes, hardship, even sacrifice.
Powerful message.
Yeah. Especially in our world where things feel so divided all the time. We have to be careful, but also open to the idea that good can come from unexpected places.
Yeah, that open-mindedness is what lets the hobbits eventually accept Strider. as their guide, I mean. At first, they have their doubts,
Mhm.
but they see his courage, his wisdom, and they choose to believe in him. And that decision, it's a leap of faith, really.
It
It
is.
sets them on the path to Mordor.
Wow. And it all begins in this seemingly ordinary inn, the Prancing Pony, but it's a crossroads of destiny.
It is. It's incredible how Tolkien takes this everyday place and gives it so much meaning.
He was a genius. He could blend those epic, grand things with the everyday stuff so seamlessly.
Absolutely. The profound and the whimsical.
That's why The Lord of the Rings is so timeless, you know?
Yeah, totally agree.
So before we finish up this deep dive, one last question for our listeners. Think about what we know about Strider now. We know he's Aragorn.
The rightful king.
Yeah, the heir to Gondor's throne. How do you think that first meeting in Bree shapes how the hobbits trust him going forward? Keep that in mind as you continue your journey through Middle-earth.
It makes you think about leadership, loyalty, and what hope can mean when everything seems dark.
Thank you so much for taking us through this chapter. Really insightful.
My pleasure.
And listeners, until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those questions, and never lose that spirit of adventure. Me